how and why did you decide to like delve so deep into like the aquatic sciences and even plant biology and all that? Like, what was the origin of all this enthusiasm? Yeah. Zenscape. Hey guys, welcome back to Zenscape, where we experience the divine through aqua design. Today, we are going to chat with Dennis Wong of 2Hr Aquarist. You might know him as the man who popularized growing difficult red stem plants such as the hygrophila sp chai. So stay tuned to find out if he prefers spiderwood or Spider-Man. Let's dive in. Okay, hey Dennis, thanks so much for having us in your beautiful lab slash, what would you call it?
we do call it the 2Hr gallery.
Gallery. Yeah,
Yes.
lab slash gallery.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to be here, and thanks for making time. So first off, some icebreaker questions.
Okay,
Just
yeah.
3 second stuff. Coke or Pepsi?
Neither. I don't drink sugar drinks.
Okay.
But I'll drink Coke Zero, I guess.
Okay. Chicken or duck?
Both. Variety is good.
Variety is good. Okay. Iwagumi or NA style?
I think NA has more variety as well.
Okay.
Well, Iwagumi, I think only if you happen to come across some very nice rocks. And then it's a very subtle art form. So I think that less people would appreciate that.
So your choice would be Nature Aquarium?
Yeah, NA has more variety.
Okay. Spiderwood or Spider-Man?
I'll take Spiderwood.
Not a Marvel fan, I guess.
I think it's okay.
It's okay.
I watch it on occasion.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Last one. Amano shrimp or tiger prawn?
No, I'll choose the tiger prawn.
Tiger prawn.
Yeah, choose tiger
Eat
prawn.
it lah.
Eat it.
Nice.
Yeah.
You ever thought of cooking your ornamental shrimp before? No?
Actually, yes.
Have
I was thinking they would make nice heavy.
Yeah, that's what I thought also.
But never tried.
Okay, maybe use some cow shrimps. Then you can.
Oh yeah, you need to dry them first.
Yeah. This season. Yeah. Let me know how that goes.
I think
wish you all the best on that.
I think Amano shrimps are overrated.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your stand on that?
No, for one, they don't do well in the open top tanks because they escape easily.
Okay, yeah.
Secondly, because they are very large, they do nibble on some of the soft leaf plants.
Oh, okay.
So especially if you got plants that are from the TC, or certain species like AR, Overstoma helferi, the ones with softer leaves, or if you have plants that are damaged, then they may eat the outer edges. Yeah. It doesn't occur always, so it's not like 100% of them will eat all the AR that is present, but it happens enough that I don't think that I find like it's more aesthetic to get the colored streams.
True.
Whether is it red, orange, blue, you have all the colors.
And size also, I think, makes a difference.
Correct.
Like, it makes your scape feel like larger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true. Okay, that's an interesting insight. I never thought of that. Okay, so how many countries does 2Hr Aquarist sell to? I mean,
we sell to every continent on Earth except for Antarctica, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, we are as far as I think Peru, Maldives.
Even Africa and all that.
South Africa,
right.
Iraq.
Oh, okay.
Iraq, Japan, and Australia, New Zealand.
Right,
we have a very wide distribution base.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say the aquascaping scene has to be quite mature in a place for you to sell your products?
Actually, no. I think that it requires a small core group of enthusiasts in the country.
Okay, that'll be sufficient.
And the small core group will be sufficient enough to fund a couple of well set up local shops. And that's all you need for a community to start. In some countries, this culture is more widespread, such as like Japan.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, for let's say half of their revenue fully comes from Japan. Then the other half of the world makes up the rest of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so they do have a very big aquatic plant industry where like CO2 usage is common and well received, and they have the discipline to keep their tanks clean.
True.
The hobby makes a lot of headway there. But in some countries that are say fully tropical, they are very warm. Then you have the weather against you.
Yeah, you need chillers.
Correct. Then the hobby becomes a bit harder to start.
Okay.
And I think for many of the Asian countries, like say Vietnam, Thailand, it can be tough import laws that makes certain products difficult to get. So I think one advantage in Singapore that we see that we don't think much about is that we actually can get goods from all over the world at reasonable prices. That means that people who import the goods don't have to pay a bribe to officials and such.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whereas for many of the countries that are a bit more chaotic, like Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam.
Right. There's a higher barrier to entry.
Correct. So the problem is not that like people don't know how to send the goods there, or what. But the person importing may have to. The cost to him may not be worth it after bribing all the officials to get his paperwork done.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And in such countries, it can be hard to get goods, even though people in those countries want the goods.
So for you to get your products into places such as Iraq actually took quite. The hurdle was.
Sorry, not Iraq. Kuwait.
Sorry. Okay.
Iraq is the chaotic one.
Okay.
Iraq, someone wanted to import but couldn't. Whereas our products are in Kuwait.
I see.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Cool. So, what is the most interesting meeting you might have had overseas? Let's say with a potential buyer or client.
I think that I've traveled to across many countries for this hobby. Just out of my interest. So I've seen tanks from Thailand to Japan to Europe to US. And what I thought was interesting is that there are a few things that kind of bonds everyone together. And for another angle, some people in some places can do things very differently. So for example, I think in Asia, most of Asia, people tend to err on the side of less. After they sell out a tank, they want to interfere less and wanting to let. So for example, folks here are afraid of overdosing fertilizer, adding too much stuff. Whereas I find in the States, the opposite happens. People wondering whether they are doing enough. They always think that, is my plant not growing well because I don't add enough fertilizer?
Oh, okay. The mentality
so
is different.
The mentality approach the same problem from different angles. And I think the solution is always in somewhere in the middle again. Where some tanks there may be a lack, some tanks there's excess.
Right.
So it shouldn't be seen for only one direction. But if I give the same problematic tank to two groups of people, I'll be surprised that
they're trying to solve it
correct.
diagnose differently, right?
So I'll say that a lot of the people I know from the US side, just the average hobbyists, not the experts, they'll be like, you should add more. In Asia, they're like, have you meddled with the tank too much? Are you adding too much stuff?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So to me, this is very almost diametrically opposite perspective on how to approach an issue.
And you've seen this pattern quite consistently.
I'll say
when
the
you travel
biggest
to the
contrast
West.
is Asia, Singapore, Japan versus US. I do think that the US people seem to want to add a lot of stuff. It's like they want to adjust the pH, they want to add more fertilizer. You know,
there's a lot of this.
In Japan, I think also maybe because their water is naturally pure, high quality. As long as you let the tank stabilize, stuff seems to settle in. So they are wary about adding too much stuff that is not necessary.
Okay.
So to me, these two approaches are quite interesting.
Right. But you would say it's easier to do aquascaping in Japan than
I think that if you are in a place where you have good water quality, definitely it makes it easier. If you have suitable temperature, good water quality, and access to reasonably priced products, then the hobby is easy. So
that's true.
I think that in Singapore, it's actually an easy place to have it. The one thing you have to fight is the temperature. But we get good access to goods. We have good trade links, so we get products from all over the world.
That's true. Okay, cool. And out of all the 2Hr Aquarist products, what is one product you would say you are most proud of? Of course, as with your children, you might say, I'm proud of all of them, yes. But
I think there are two that I'm quite proud of.
That
I think stands above the rest. One of them is this new product. So I call it APT Fixed Light. So APT Fixed was our default algaecide. But Fixed Light is a new algaecide made of a separate component that I discovered while testing it out at the lab. So it can kill algae on plants while being gentle on plants.
Right, even mosses and things.
So it was designed with the intention of for people who use a lot of moss-heavy scapes that they can spot this onto the mosses.
Right.
And it burns off the surface algae, but even delicate plants are left untouched.
Wow. Okay, that's a game changer, I think.
So I think that one has been popular among the markets that already know about it. Because I know a lot of aquascapers use moss. And moss is also easy to get algae on it from the small upsets in the tank. So that's one product I like. And I do think that our default range, the APD Complete, is quite well put together. And the reason I say this is by now we have users all across the world. As I said just now, as far as Maldives, Peru, the US, Canada, to New Zealand, Japan. And yet the fertilizer has worked like constantly well for large groups of people. So it's not only that I can demonstrate good results using my tank, which is one angle, but people can replicate my results in their home countries. So I have people from Turkey, from the US, from Japan. They have tanks that are growing the plants the same way that I do, using the similar product. So to me, that is it's a greater achievement than just being able to demonstrate it in my own tanks. Because I think being successful is when you can transfer your success to others as well.
So different contexts.
Replicable. And I see this across many regions.
Interesting. So do you actually envision 2Hr Aquarist like growing to what it is today? I mean, when you first started,
I did not realize how widespread this hobby was. I mean, I knew it existed in the like Western countries. So I know like, the Europeans did it, the Japanese did it, and I know a lot of the Asian countries did it. But I wasn't aware, for example, that there are very big communities in the Middle East, big communities in Turkey, in South Africa, that also did this as a hobby. So I'm surprised to see like it's a lot more widespread than I thought. And despite people coming from very different areas, a lot of them have the similar goals. Like, I want to grow these colorful plants. And they face similar problems as well. Algae, the same old problem. And how to grow certain difficult species.
Wow. And actually going back to, I guess, the start, or even before 2Hr Aquarist and all that, how and why did you decide to like delve so deep into like the aquatic sciences and even plant biology and all that? Like, what was the origin of all this enthusiasm?
I think that I grew up as a kid that liked to figure out how like systems work. And I think that in some sense, the biggest system we are in is like Earth, right? But Earth is one that is tremendously complex. Aquarium is like a scaled down, isolated, enclosed space that allows you to experiment with the different input variables to see what comes out of it. And I find that it is one system that allows you so many permutations. What you do in the substrate, how you change the water, the different organisms you put in. And it's a system that you can mold, and yet there's an aesthetic component to it as well. So it's not like bacteria in a petri dish where you can manipulate it, but it's like, is there an aesthetic component to it? Whereas this one, there's a blend of the aesthetics, a blend of nature in the home, and yet it's one that you can shape and also learn things about. And I think the more I learned about it, the more things I found that to be learned as well.
Like more things you discover ends up getting more questions. Which is the beauty of discovery, I guess.
So I think there is a hobby that actually allows a lot of depth for people that are just interested in, let's say, biology. So there's a lot of it's a hobby with a lot to give if you have the time to explore it.
That's true. And as a kid, did you already kind of like decided on this path, or like at least,
I think
it
grew.
realized?
I think it grew organically, and I think that because I met people that were also interested in it, that I can discuss stuff with. A lot of these were online communities.
Online.
So it became something that just grew and grew over time. And I think that as I got more well known as well, then I got put deeper into it.
Right.
Because as you get more well known, other experts themselves come and
connect with you.
They realize
and then you learn more from each other.
Correct.
Right. That's true. Wow. Okay, so in your opinion, like in all your experience, which plant would you say is the hardest to kill?
To kill? I think that there are different types of hardiness. Right. So for example, Anubias java fern, two of the classic low-tech, easy to grow species. They are very tolerant of low light and lean conditions. So they are hardy in that sense. However, they are also, let's say, very vulnerable to algae. So if I have a tank that for some reason has a very bad algae infection, the harder to grow stem plants that are high requirement actually recover faster than Anubias java fern, right?
Right.
So while the Anubias java fern has a high tolerance for lean conditions, one can argue that certain stem plants, they can be colored stem plants like the red rotala, actually recover faster if you give them the right conditions. So which one is hardier?
True.
Right?
What type of hardiness?
Yeah, what type of hardiness? If you asking from just people being able to sustain it in their tanks, I guess the default will be, your Java fern. I think is a bit tougher than Anubias. I think Java fern is the
that will have
top tier for toughness.
Right.
But in terms of being able to recover from a hit, maybe something like pearlweed.
Pearlweed, I see.
I think pearlweed, water wisteria.
Right.
These stem plants that you can hit it very hard, but once the growth conditions are bad, it regenerates very fast.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Different types of hardiness. I see. And there are certain camps that at least we've heard of that people decide, I don't want to use Seriyu stone or other kind of stones that affect hardness of water and change parameters because of that very reason, because of the fact that they want something inert, right? What would your stand on that? Like,
I think that if you're hobbies with less experience, it's not a bad baseline because you can rule that out as a factor when you are analyzing your tank. True. And I think that this is a very significant thing for most hobbyists because most hobbyists don't come in as an expert. So if something goes wrong, so let's say you have Seriyu in your tank and your water hardness fluctuates. Whenever something goes wrong, you'll be left questioning, is it because of that? And if you're not an expert, you actually do not know. You cannot rule it out. So it's one less variable for people to deal with until they have mastered so-called the other basics.
I see.
But once you know the impact of the water hardness on plant species, and you know which species react negatively to that and you can account for that, then I don't think it's such a big deal having it in the tank.
Got it. Okay, so speaking of such misconceptions, what is one misconception that you might have heard in the hobby throughout your years, like that you would like to clarify, or you find that it's like the most glaring or important misconception to clarify? In your opinion, of course.
Most important.
Or at least something you hear very often.
I think there's something that I hear very often is this idea of that tanks need a stable pH to run well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that in the entire freshwater hobby, this is the most pervasive myth.
Okay.
But it has its roots in some grounded concepts as well.
Okay.
Right. So
you can share about how this misconception came about and what are the bases or grounds that this.
So there are I think that people are concerned with pH fluctuations with the idea that most livestock or plants like a stable pH at one point.
Right.
And if it moves in a very wide range, basically it affects the livestock osmoregulation or the plant's ability to grow. And it depends on what changes the pH. And so there are many things that can change the pH in the tank or in nature for that matter. And depending on what changes the pH, it may or may not matter.
Okay.
Right. So the pH, unfortunately, in the same way that TDS is one big number that doesn't show you what is changing it, pH is also a very simple measure of the acidity, alkalinity of the water. But unless you know what has changed the pH, it may or may not affect what is happening in the tank. So I'll say that both pH and TDS, the numbers matters a lot less than what is causing that change. So I'll give you the example for TDS, which is easier to demonstrate. You can have a limestone tank that is 300 TDS because of the high calcium and carbonate levels, and you can grow plants perfectly fine if the plants are suited for the harder water. However, you can have a tank with, let's say, 50 TDS, but it has 1 pp of copper, and everything dies. Right. So there's a very clear example where the TS value itself doesn't prove whether a tank is well run or not. And the 1 ppm copper thing does happen to people with copper piping in some countries. So their TDS can come out of the tap at 50 to 60, but they cannot grow anything. All the streams die because you have very heavy copper in the pipes. Similarly, you can have the perfect pH, whatever number you want to
Or a
throw
very
out.
stable one.
Or a very stable one. And there can be underlying issues. So what matters in the this whole pH thing is the underlying KH. So KH always changes the pH. And it is not great for some livestock and plant species to have a fluctuating KH. But for many species, if your fluctuation is slow, it's not that big a deal. And it is the fluctuating KH that causes problems, not the pH per se. So while a fluctuating KH always causes a fluctuating pH, there are other things that can cause a fluctuating pH that doesn't cause a downside. For example, CO2 injection. And I use the nature's example of CO2 injection instead to show that, to demonstrate this point. In many natural bodies, the CO2 is not at a stable level. The CO2 actually builds up throughout the night by decomposing organic material in the substrate, or it can be bubble up from the underground aquifers where CO2 is stored. So at night when the plants don't use CO2, the CO2 levels build up in the water body. So in the day, the natural stream actually can start with as much CO2 as our CO2 injected tanks.
It's as if it was filled with CO2 already. Almost.
And so this is the other misconception that, nature has no CO2 injection. It does have. A nature is not like a tank that, actually having the non-CO2 injected tank with a 2 to 3 ppm mean of CO2 level, that is actually very unnatural because you have no natural carbon source. Whereas in nature, where areas where you find this rich aquatic plant growth, there's usually a CO2 source, whether is it from underground aquifers with CO2 or organic decomposition. So the CO2 will build up through the night, pH will drop. So that water body will start the day with actually a low pH, let's say pH 6, 30, 40 ppm of CO2. As the sun rises and the plants are exposed to the sunlight and photosynthesis begin, the CO2 will start to drop and the pH will start to rise. And for a lot of these natural bodies, between morning and noon, there's a 1 pH fluctuation as the CO2 is totally exhausted by noon.
Right.
And this happens every day. And these are the water bodies that we find actually very rich plant life in where most of our aquatic plant comes from. And this is a very well-studied. These are well-studied data that you can find in books. So if you read the Crystal Castleman books on aquatic plants, you'll see tables where they do surveys of natural CO2 levels in this stream or that stream. And it's often quite elevated, between 10 to 40 ppm of CO2. And these streams will also face that same pH fluctuation throughout the day. And obviously the livestock or whatever that's found there,
thriving.
It's thriving. Right? So this idea that you need to have an absolute stable pH number, it does not, it's not true. It depends on whether you have your underlying KH is stable or not. If the underlying KH is stable, it's fine. The other things can cause your pH to change and it won't affect things much. I mean, another very simple thing is most fertilizer will change your pH a little bit. Or things like if you throw a teaspoon of lemon juice into the tank, it can change your pH quite a bit. But it won't change anything else in the tank.
That's true. Okay, wow.
And I think that in
cool.
search of this whole stable pH, why this myth is damaging is people begin to introduce other chemicals that are not very helpful. So for example, a lot of people try to increase their KH by a substantial amount, thinking that, this will stabilize my pH. Where you yourself is causing that KH flux, right? So your KH was stable at this low point. Then every time you do a water change, you are creating the flux by adding chemicals. Then unless your measurement is as accurate, that is the flux, right? And it's it's action that don't bring extra benefits because the majority of fish and plants that we keep in this hobby are saltwater fish. They actually prefer the lower KH and lower pH levels.
I hear you. Wow, that's a very important
distinction.
Definitely. Since we were talking about CO2 a little bit, just a last question actually. In terms of methods of CO2 injection, do you have any opinion on the effectiveness of the various methods of injection using a diffuser, atomizer?
I think that while the hobby started out with most people using in-tank diffusers, the one with the bubble, like CO2
like
bubbler by the side, I think that is by far the worst method. So I think by modern standards, unless you have no other choice, that method should not be used. it's subjected to a lot of exterior factors. It clogs more easily. Then if you have plants that grow and crop that place, it changes the flow of your tank. We have done empirical testing ourselves, and tanks that run those bubblers, it's just harder to get a consistent high injection rate unless you're extremely consistent about keeping it clean and making sure that your flow hits it exactly the same way over a time period. I think that if for people using canisters that have a hose, then the inline atomizers actually work very well. They don't clog easily. And if you get one with a fine membrane, the dissolution rate is good, and the distribution is also good because it follows the flow.
Right. Okay.
And then your last choice will be the CO2 reactor. And I think that reactors can work well, but they require to be paired with a certain flow rate. Yeah. So if you have an underpowered filter, then your reactors probably won't work well. And if you have a very large tank, your reactors have to upsize accordingly. And from my experience is that for folks that have no experience with tuning reactors, they actually have difficulty saturating their water.
Okay.
Yeah, because depending on the reactor design and the flow rate, unless you solve those two variables precisely, you will not get as high a saturation rate as it could be.
At least not consistently as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most commercial reactors sold on the market are too small. That means that by the time you are reaching 3-4 feet size, unless you buy online from very niche dealers, there's no reactor I can go to a pet shop, just buy and it works. They're all too small.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you ask me, right, I'll say a single CO2 atomizer, a standard 1622, I can saturate a 3,000 liter tank with a single one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've tested this on the Zeus tank before.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
The equivalent size reactor to do that will be like 3-4 feet in length.
Okay.
Right. So that's the range of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they can work well, but a lot of hobbies have problem calibrating reactors.
Got it.
Yeah. The downside of the inline diffusers and such is that you get this mist in your tank, which some people don't like. Yeah.
But it's a small thing to overlook for most of
No, I think for some folks it's a big thing.
Yeah? Okay.
For some folks it's a big thing. For them, they have to solve the reactor angle. And it can be solved. Just that don't expect to find a solution at your pet shop.
Okay.
You either buy from online specialist dealers where they are very large size, or you learn to DIY some of the stuff. So it's not so easy. You can't just buy off a shelf solution.
Got it. Wow, cool. Thank you, Dennis. That's all the questions we have today.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate your time, man.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope you liked that and we hope you gleaned some knowledge and insights from Dennis's experience. So if you like what you see, remember to like, share and subscribe. Also hit that notification bell as it really helps the channel out. Until next time, escape zenly.
Bring it.